close your eyes for a moment. You are standing near a marsh. The air is warm. You hear insects, birds, and wind in tall grass. This does not look like the Rome of marble buildings and big forums. But this is where our story begins. Welcome to Rome Unveiled.
When people visit Rome today, they expect stone, columns, roads that seem to last forever. But the Rome I want to show you was very different. It was wet. It was made of wood. And it was uncertain.
I am Sarah. I travel around the world to learn how places tell their history. In this podcast, I ask what is hidden behind the famous pictures we think we know.
And I am Giovanni. I have guided people in Rome for many years, not only to monuments, but also to old stories.
The story we usually tell about Rome sounds simple and confident. A city begins. Kings rule. A republic is born. But history is rarely that simple.
What we call early Rome sits between memory and myth. The people who told these stories lived many years later.
In this first episode, we go back to Rome before marble, monuments, and clear answers. To understand the Rome that ruled the world, we must first understand the Rome that did not yet know what it would become. Before we talk about that mud, a quick note. If you are here in the city, you can make this experience better. Use our app, Rome Audio Tour Guide offline. It is a complete tour guide. It works without the internet.
We made it so you can listen to these stories while you walk through the ruins. If you want to learn more about the archaeology, there are long audio guides for every place. You can listen to the full story offline. This is good when you are deep in the forum. The phone signal is weak there.
It is the perfect way to explore. You can go at your own speed. Okay, Giovanni. Back to the swamp.
Imagine this. We are standing on a valley. Long ago, it was a swamp. People forgot about it. If you want to understand Rome, you must forget the history you think you know. You must forget the cold, permanent stone. Now close your eyes.
Okay, I trust you. My eyes are closed. What should I see? Or hear?
First, feel the air. It is not the dry, dusty heat of a Roman summer. It is heavy. It is damp. It smells of wet earth. It smells of wood smoke. It smells of something else. Something wild. Like a wet animal.
It smells a bit old. And I think imaginary mosquitoes are biting me.
Exactly. Now listen. The tourists' whispers are gone. The city traffic is gone. What do you hear instead?
I hear sheep. Is that sheep bleating? And maybe a bird. I do not know that bird.
You do. Now listen closer. That sound. It is a rhythmic thudding sound. It is not a construction site. It is a wooden hammer. It is driving a post into the wet ground. Someone is building a hut.
A hut? Right here? Where the Basilica Julia should be.
Right here. And that sharp cry on the wind? That is not a siren. It is a baby. It is crying inside one of those huts. We are not in the forum, Sarah. We are in a graveyard. It separates a few tiny, struggling villages.
Wow. Okay. My eyes are open again. It is hard to connect that image with these huge broken columns. You took us back very far.
About 2,800 years. Welcome to the place that was not Rome. Not yet.
So let's start there, Giovanni. In that wet, smoky valley full of sheep. You called it a swampy, bad place. Why would anyone choose to live here? Italy has many beautiful, good places for farming. Why this one?
Because you think like a modern person. You see a swamp and think of sickness and problems. A person in the late Bronze Age, maybe 1,000 years before Christ, saw something different. They saw safety.
Safety from what? It sounds like you would be safer from insects somewhere else.
Safety from other people. Look around us, even at these ruins. You can see the hills on all sides. The Palatine Hill, the Capitoline Hill, the Quirinal Hill. In a time with no police, no armies, a steep hill is your best friend. The valleys were very wet, yes. They often flooded from the Tiber River, but the hilltops were windy. They were easy to defend. They had their own freshwater springs.
So they lived on the hills. They just ignored the wetland in the middle?
They used it. The bog, that's land that is always very wet, was like a moat. It made a direct attack on their villages much harder. And this bog, this valley we are in right now, had another job. For the first few hundred years, it was their cemetery. It was the place where they buried dead people.
They buried their dead in a swamp? I still do not like this place.
It was not a swamp all year. It was seasonal. But more important, it was neutral ground. It separated the small groups of huts on the different hilltops. The people living here were part of the Apennine culture. They were shepherds and farmers, not city people.
And what do we know about them? What kind of signs did these first Romans leave behind?
Very little. Holes in the dirt where their huts stood. Pieces of simple handmade pottery. And their dead. They burned their dead. They put the ashes in small clay urns. The urns were shaped exactly like their huts.
Hut urns. I have seen pictures of those. They are amazing. It is like a little clay dollhouse for life after death.
It is the most personal message they left us. It says this is who we were. We lived in homes like this. The huts were round or oval. They were made of wattle and daub. That means a frame of woven branches packed with mud and straw. They had a thatched roof. When you find one of these urns, you hold a perfect model of a home from 3,000 years ago. It is a quiet, close look into a world that left no other record.
It still feels very lonely, doesn't it? These tiny groups of life, separated by a wet graveyard. It feels separate, like they were just waiting for something to happen. What was the spark, Giovanni? What finally made these people leave their hills and start building a future together?
They did not have to look far. The answer was right at the foot of the hills. But it was not just one spark, Sarah. It was two. Two forces that met right here in the mud.
Before you tell us what they found, I want to help our listeners find their way here too. Everything Giovanni is describing, the space between those hills, the shape of that ancient valley, truly comes alive when you stand in the Forum. If you are planning your own walk through history, our app, Rome Audio Tour Guide Offline, has a full walking route. It starts right here. It works with no internet. It follows the exact archaeological layers we are talking about today, from the place of those hut urns all the way to the Great Sewer. It is the perfect friend for when you want to learn more at your own speed. Okay, Giovanni, back to that spark. You said there were two things that changed everything?
Two things. One was a god, and the other, a salt road.
A god in the river and a salt road. Now it is getting interesting.
The Tiber River was a difficult river. It was too shallow for big ships from the sea. But it was also too fast. It often flooded. This made it unfriendly. But here, in this exact spot, there was a secret. A small island. Tiber Island. It broke the river's current. This made a shallow crossing point possible. This crossing point was like finding gold. It was the only place to cross the river for a very long distance.
So it was a natural control point, a place where roads met.
Exactly. A very important old road was here. It was called the Via Salaria, or the Salt Route. It ran from the salt flats at the river's mouth to the Sabine Hills. Salt was very important. People used it to keep food from going bad. In the ancient world, salt was like oil or money. It was wealth. Controlling the river crossing where that road met the water, that was very smart and powerful.
So the people on these hills were like gatekeepers. They controlled a major trade road.
They were. They were in the perfect position. They could watch. They could tax people. They could trade. They lived in a difficult place, yes. It was full of sickness and floods. But it was also a place of opportunity. They chose the difficult place because it was the profitable place, the important place. That is a very Roman decision when you think about it.
Choosing the difficult but profitable option. I can see that. So they weren't just lonely shepherds. They were like business people sitting on an ancient highway.
In a way, they were still shepherds. They lived in tiny villages. But they had a view. They could see the world passing by on that salt road. And one day, they decided they wanted more of it.
It's a powerful picture, Giovanni. These little hilltop villages, looking down at this important river crossing. But a group of villages is not a city. What was the spark? What was the moment everything changed?
The moment they stopped burying their dead between the hills. For hundreds of years, this valley, the future Roman Forum, was a cemetery. We have found the graves. They were simple holes in the ground. The hut urns were inside them. But then, around 775 before Christ, it stops.
They just stopped? Altogether?
Altogether. The graves end. At the exact same time, we find the first signs of huts. These huts were on the slopes looking down at the valley. The evidence is clear. They made a group decision. They moved the dead out. They turned this space into something new.
They cleared the cemetery to make a town square.
The first shared space for everyone. It wasn't paved yet. It was still just a piece of muddy ground. But it was no longer a place for the dead. It was a place for the living. A place to meet, to trade, to make decisions. This is the first act of city planning in Roman history. It's the moment the separate villages on the hilltops started to think of themselves as one community.
How do we know the date so exactly? 775 before Christ sounds very specific for a time with no writing.
Pottery. Specifically, pottery from Greece. In the last graves in that cemetery, we find pieces of cups and bowls. We find the same pieces in the earliest huts on the Palatine Hill. These pieces come from Euboea and Corinth. We can date these objects. They tell us that these early Romans were not alone. They were connected to the big trade networks of the Mediterranean Sea.
So Greek traders were sailing up the Tiber River to this muddy little place?
Maybe not directly, but their goods were. The 8th century before Christ was a time of big growth. The Phoenicians were trading all over the western Mediterranean. The Greeks were making new towns in southern Italy and Sicily. These little villages on the Tiber River were on the edge of that busy, connected world.
And they were buying their pottery. What else were they trading?
They were trading their location. They controlled the shallow crossing point. They had salt. And they were the bridge between two groups. To the north were the advanced Etruscan cities. To the south were the Greek colonies. They were middlemen. And they were getting rich.
Is there archaeological proof of this new importance? Besides a few broken cups?
Oh yes, the most amazing proof is just over there. It is in a place called the Santo Mobono area. This is near the ancient river port. In the 1930s, people digging found the bases of two very early temples. These temples are from the 6th century before Christ. But under them, they found something even more important.
Let me guess. More hut urns?
No. A deep layer of votive offerings. These were gifts for the gods. There were thousands of tiny clay pots. There were animal bones from sacrifices. There were little models of shields and helmets. It was a sacred site, a holy place. People used it from at least the late 8th century before Christ. People came here, to the port, to this specific spot. They made offerings to the gods.
What does that tell us?
It tells us this was not just a group of huts anymore. It was a place with a spiritual center. It was a recognized holy place connected to trade and the river. It shows a community with a shared identity. They shared the same gods. They shared an interest in protecting their way of life. They were no longer just Palatine Hill people or Capitoline Hill people. They were becoming something else.
They were becoming Romans.
They were. And they were doing it by choice. They cleared the old graves. They created a common space. They worshipped at a common altar. The city wasn't founded by one man on one day. It was willed into existence. It happened over many generations. It happened because people decided to live together.
So this picture you're painting, Giovanni, is one of slow local change. People who were already here decided to form a city. But for a long time, the story was different, wasn't it? The idea was that more advanced people, maybe the Etruscans, came in and took over. An invasion?
That was the old theory, yes. It was an easy way to explain the sudden jump forward. This happened in the 7th and 6th centuries. They started writing. They built big buildings. They made sophisticated art. It was easier to imagine it was brought in by a conquering elite.
But that's not what the science says now.
No. The science, specifically the study of ancient DNA, tells a very different story. DNA is the material in our bodies that carries our family information. Recent studies looked at skeletons from this period, the glacial culture. They show a remarkable genetic continuity.
What does that mean, continuity?
It means the people living here in the 8th century were the direct children and grandchildren of the people living here in the 10th century and the 12th. There is no proof of a big arrival of a new population. There is no genetic sign of an invasion.
So the people who built the first Roman Forum were the great-grandchildren of the shepherds. Those shepherds lived in the wattle and daub huts.
Exactly. The change was cultural, not biological. They learned from their neighbors. the Etruscans, and the Greeks. They adopted new technologies. They adopted new ideas. They adopted new ways of organizing themselves. But they were the same people. It was a local evolution, not a foreign revolution.
That feels more powerful, somehow. That they did it themselves.
It is. It means that Rome was not an accident of conquest. It was a project. The people who had lived on these hills for centuries undertook it. They built it on their ancestors' graves.
Okay, so if it wasn't an invasion, we have to talk about the story everyone knows. The story of the wolf, the two brothers, the murder. How does the legend of Romulus and Remus fit into this picture of slow change?
It fits perfectly if you know how to read it. The legend is not history. It is a memory, encoded in the language of myth. It tells us, in its own way, everything we have just been discussing.
Go on. I am skeptical. How does a baby in a basket on the Tiber River tell us about city planning?
The story isn't just about Romulus. It starts much earlier, with Aeneas fleeing the sack of Troy. Why that story? Because by the 7th century before Christ, the Romans were surrounded by people. The Greeks and Etruscans had these grand, heroic origin stories. The Romans needed one too. They wanted to be part of that world. They did not want to be just some barbarian backwater. So they attached themselves to the greatest story of them all.
It was branding. We're not new money. We're old world aristocracy.
A perfect way to put it. It was a claim to legitimacy. But the Romulus and Remus story is more local, more primitive. It feels older. And it is full of details. Archaeology is just beginning to understand these details.
Like the she-wolf. She is the symbol of the city. Was she just a useful part of the story?
Nothing in a myth is ever just useful. The wolf was the holy animal of the war god, Mars. He was the twins' father in the story. So it connects the city's start to godly, military power. But there is a joke there too. The Latin word for wolf is lupa. That word was also slang for a prostitute.
Wait, really? So for hundreds of years, people told a story. It could mean two lost boys were raised by a prostitute?
Exactly. The Romans themselves knew this double meaning. The historian Livy wrote about it. They asked, was it a miracle? Or was it something more, normal? The story has both ideas at the same time. It is both holy and not holy. That is very Roman.
And the place where this happened, the Lupercal Cave. Is that real?
It was a real place. It was a holy cave at the bottom of the Palatine Hill. People worshipped there for centuries. In July 15, 2007, archaeologists used a special camera. They found a beautiful underground room. It was right where the cave should be. It was under the old palace of the Emperor Augustus.
They found the wolf's cave?
They found a cave. It was very beautiful and in the right place. Some experts say it is a later cave, not the first Lupercal. People still argue about it. But it proves the legend was connected to a real place. The same is true for Romulus' hut.
The Casa Romuli. The House of Romulus.
Yes. For 1,000 years, the Romans kept a simple hut on the Palatine. They said it was the founders' first home. Every time fire damaged it, they rebuilt it carefully. They used only old building ways, wattle and daub walls, and a thatched roof.
So they were keeping a very old object.
They were. And when archaeologists dug in the deepest parts of the Palatine, what did they find? They found holes for wooden posts. They found the bases of huts from the 8th century before Christ. These huts look exactly like the hut the Romans kept. We cannot say one specific group of holes was Romulus' home, but the memory was correct. This is how the first people here lived.
It is amazing that they kept that physical link for so long. If you are walking on the Palatine Hill now, you can see these hut bases. In our app, Rome Audio Tour Guide Offline, we have a special stop for the hut of Romulus. It gives more detail to help you see that simple thatch roof next to the later marble of the emperors.
That is the secret of the Palatine, Sarah. You must see through the marble to the mud. Seeing those post holes while you listen to the history, it makes the legend real. It reminds you that even the greatest empire began with one simple home.
Exactly. So the myth is not a lie. It is a different kind of truth. It is a folk memory of the city's real, simple beginnings.
Yes. Now think about the rest of the story. Romulus starts his city. He needs people. So what does he do? He opens an asylum on the Capitoline Hill. An asylum is a safe place. He welcomes runaway slaves, exiles, and criminals. He welcomes anyone.
It is a city of people who do not fit in.
It is a city of immigrants. It is a memory of a key Roman rule. They actively added outsiders. Rome grew because it was always open to new people and new energy. It was a mixing pot from its very first day.
But then he has a city full of men. This leads to one of the most famous bad stories, the rape of the Sabine women.
The raptio, yes. The kidnapping. It is a violent story. Romulus invites the neighboring Sabine people to a party. At a signal, his men take all the unmarried young women. They carry them away.
It's a terrible story. How can this be a good story about the start of a city?
Because, again, you must see it as a memory. Forget the drama. What is the real meaning? It is about two different groups of people joining together. The story does not end with a war. It ends with the Sabine women themselves. They stopped the fighting between their fathers and their new husbands. The result is one city. It is ruled together by the Roman king, Romulus, and the Sabine king, Titus Tatius.
So it's a story about a political joining.
Yes. It is a memory of Sinoicism. That is the process of different villages joining together. We think the Latins lived on the Palatine Hill. The Sabines lived on the Quirinal and Viminal hills. This story is how they remembered the moment they became one people. It was a violent and difficult union, but it was successful in the end. The story even remembers an early time with two kings.
And the most famous part? The murder of Remus. Romulus kills his own twin brother. He kills him for jumping over his half-finished walls.
The darkest part of the story, but also the most important. Remus makes fun of Romulus' wall. Romulus kills him. He says, "This will happen to anyone else who crosses my walls." It is a very cold and serious start for a city.
What does this part remember?
It remembers the sacred line around the city. This line was called the Pomerium. They made this line with a plow. Armies could not cross this line. Certain kinds of political power could not cross it. The story says the city's border was made with a human sacrifice. A blood sacrifice. It tells you something. From the very beginning, Rome took its laws, its borders, and its safety very, very seriously.
So the whole story, from the wolf to the murder, is like a rule book. It explains who the Romans are. They came from gods and heroes. They are a mix of different peoples. They welcome outsiders, but they are also very fierce about protecting their own space.
You see, it is not a history book. It is a picture of a city's soul, its true spirit. People told this story for 1,000 years. They told it because it felt true. The facts were wrong, but the feeling was right. It explained the Romans to themselves.
So we have the memory in the story, and we have the reality in the archaeology. The archaeology shows this slow coming together. When does it change? When does it stop being a group of villages with a common meeting place? When does it start to look like a real city?
The big change happens around 625 before Christ. In the space of one generation, the place is completely different. It is a real revolution.
What changes? What would I see if I was standing here in, let's say, the year 600 before Christ?
First, you would not be standing in mud. The floor of the Forum Valley is paved for the first time. They use gravel. There are proper streets being made. The seasonal flooding is being controlled. How? By a huge construction project. They build a great drain, the Cloaca Maxima.
The Great Sewer. That sounds very nice.
It is the most important building in Roman history. You cannot have a city in a wet, marshy area without drainage. The cloaca is the basic structure that makes the city center possible. At first it was an open channel. Later they put a roof over it. But it was a massive public work. It needed planning, resources, and a lot of workers.
So you have a dry, paved public square. What is in it?
Buildings. Not marble temples yet, but big, strong structures. On the north side of the Forum, they build the first Senate house, the Curia Hostilia. In front of it, they make a special meeting space for the people, the Comitium. This is the birth of the political heart of Rome.
A place for the Senate to meet, and a place for the people to gather. That is a huge step.
It is everything. It is the physical form of a state, a real government. And there is more.
It is a lot to understand when you stand here among the broken stones. If you use our Roman Forum tour in the Rome Audio Tour Guide offline app, we have clear parts for each place. You can learn about the Curia, the Basilica Julia, and the Temple of Saturn. The guide helps you see the different layers of history. You can learn at your own speed.
I like that idea, peeling back the layers. It is the only way to really see the Forum. If you stand by the Curia and listen to the guide, it is like having special eyes. You can see the Republic being born from the wet ground. For example, on the Capitoline Hill, they start building a huge temple for their main god, Jupiter. And around the Palatine Hill, the oldest village, they build a strong wall. They use big blocks of stone.
People call it the Wall of Romulus.
Some people do. It is a very old city wall from that time. A king named Romulus probably did not build it, but it shows a city marking its land and protecting itself. Now it has a government center, a religious center, and a wall. It is clearly a city now.
And all this happens so quickly, in only a few decades. What causes it? Where do the skill and money come from?
Look to the north. Look across the Tiber River. The Etruscans were very important at this time. By the late 7th century, Etruscan cities like Veii and Tarquini were rich, strong, and very advanced. Rome was like a town on their border.
So this is where the invasion idea came from. It looks like the Etruscans took control.
It looks like very strong Etruscan influence. The old Roman stories say the last 3 kings before the Republic were Etruscans, the Tarquins. Modern experts argue if these kings were real people. But the story remembers a time when Etruscans were in charge, or at least had very close contact.
So they brought their building and engineering skills with them.
It seems that way. The style of the early temples, the clay decorations, the building of the Cloaca Maxima, it all feels Etruscan. Even the name. Many experts think the name Roma is an Etruscan word.
So this big step forward, the moment Rome becomes Rome, is helped by its more advanced neighbors.
Yes, but it is not just copying. The Romans take these ideas and change them. They build a political space, the Comitium. It has a special Roman job. They build a city that learns from the Etruscans, but it is not the same. It has its own character, its own future. This is the moment you can see that future in the stones and the earth.
It is interesting. Many things we think are Roman actually came from their neighbors. Let us check the facts. What are the big things Rome really got from the Etruscans?
The influence is very deep. But there are clear examples. First, the symbols of political power. The fasces, that is a bundle of sticks with an axe in the middle. A leader's guards carried it. It is an Etruscan symbol. It showed the king's power to punish and kill.
That symbol, thousands of years later, gives us the word fascism.
The same one. Also, the special toga with a purple edge, the toga praetexta. Important leaders wore it. The special folding chair they sat on, the sella curulus. These are all part of a king's tools. The Romans took them from their Etruscan neighbors.
So the look of Roman power was imported. What about something more fun, like gladiators? I always heard the Etruscans invented them.
Many people believe that. But the proof is not simple. Funeral games with fighting did happen in Etruria. But the gladiator fights we know seem to start further south, in Campania. The Romans probably got it from there. But they connected any big bloody show with the Etruscans.
Okay, so gladiators are a maybe. What is something that is definitely Etruscan?
The art of reading the future. One way was haruspicy. That means looking at the inside parts of a killed animal to tell the future. Another way was augury. That means watching the flight of birds. The Romans always wanted to know the gods, well before doing anything big. They believed the Etruscans were the best at this science.
So the toga, the symbols of power, and how to talk to the gods. They got all the important things from other people.
They were very practical. If your neighbor has a better idea, you do not fight it. You take it and make it better. That is the Roman way.
We are back where we started, Giovanni. We are standing in the Roman Forum. The sun is getting higher. It feels so different now. Now we know what is under it all.
It is different. You are not standing on ruins anymore. You are standing on layers of choices. The choice to stop burying dead people here. The choice to cover it with stone. The choice to build a Senate house.
And below that, the first choice. The choice to live on these hills in the first place. They chose a place next to a salty road and a difficult river.
Every stone here is the final word in a very long argument. An argument about who they were. An argument about who they wanted to be. They had this argument for hundreds of years. They had it before anyone thought to write it down.
That is the most amazing part to me. The people who made all these first decisions, they cleared the cemetery. They built the first huts. They could not read or write. They left us no books. They left us no writing on stone. They left us no letters.
They did not. We do not know a single one of their names. We only know them from the shapes of their houses. We know them from the marks of their tools. We know them from the bones of their dead people.
It makes you wonder, what would they think if they could see this? What would they think if they saw what their little group of hilltop villages became?
I think they would understand. The size would shock them. The white marble stone would blind them. But the job of this place? A center of power, of law, of business, of religion? They built the seed of it, the very small beginning. They would recognize the shape of their own big dreams.
That wind is getting strong again. It feels like the same wind we imagined at the beginning.
It is the same wind. It blows over the same 7 hills. It blows from the same river. It is the one thing, perhaps, that has not changed.
They left us no writing.
No, but they left us this. They left us the place itself. They left us the promise of the place. And for 2,000 years, the world has tried to be good enough for it.
That is a beautiful way to say it. Thank you so much, Giovanni. Thank you for helping us see through the stone. Thank you for helping us see back to those first huts. It has been an incredible journey.
It was my pleasure, Sarah. The stones have many more stories to tell, but you must know how to listen.
If today's journey into Rome's first history made you want to visit, do not go to the ruins alone. Download the Rome Audio Tour Guide offline app from the App Store or Play Store today, or find the link at www.romeunveiled.com.
It really is the best way to see the layers of choices we talked about. We made special walking routes. For example, the Palatine Hill Tour and the Roman Forum Tour. They guide you step by step through every spot. They go from the Casa Romuli to the Basilica Julia. For each place, I added deep talks. So you can really understand the archaeology while you stand right in front of it.
It is like having your own personal guide right in your pocket. It lets you explore the Eternal City at your own speed. We will see you in the next episode.